a broken soldier returned home and found an orc mother raising 2 children in his house. What he did next would change the lives of everyone in his village, and eventually, far beyond it. This is that story. Warren had not slept properly in 3 years, not the kind of sleep that actually rested you. He could close his eyes, had learned to do it in ditches, in mud, propped against dead horses when nothing else was available. But somewhere between lying down and waking up, something had stopped happening. The part where the mind let go, the part where the body believed, even temporarily, that it was safe. He'd stopped expecting it to come back. Some things the war took, you didn't get returned. He'd been walking for 3 days when he finally crested the low hill and saw his farm below. The word farm was being generous. What he saw was a collection of shapes he recognized. The house, the barn, the well. The apple trees his mother had planted 15 years ago, now overgrown in ways that suggested no one had touched them in at least 2. The fence, which had been straight when he left, now leaned in 3 different directions with the philosophical inconsistency of a man who'd had too much to drink. The war had ended 6 months ago, or it had stopped, which was the more accurate way to put it. Wars didn't end. They exhausted themselves, ran out of young men to feed into them, ran out of reasons that felt fresh enough to keep people dying for. Then the people in comfortable rooms signed papers, and the people in the mud were told it was over, and they picked themselves up out of whatever crater they happened to be occupying and started walking. Warren had walked through 3 provinces to get here. He'd passed through villages that had been burned and rebuilt and burned again. Through towns that held the particular emptiness of places that had lost too many people to ever fill the spaces back up. He'd slept in barns when farmers offered, and in ditches when they didn't, and he'd kept walking because forward was the only direction that made sense anymore. Now he was here. He stood at the top of the hill for a long time, just looking. He was looking for the thing that would make it feel like coming home. Some recognition in his chest, some settling of the weight that had lived behind his sternum for 3 years. He'd been carrying a picture of this place in his head through every campaign, every march, every moment when he needed something to hold on to. The picture had kept him moving. The reality was quieter than the picture, smaller, more real in ways that were harder to deal with than the imagined version had been. But then he saw the smoke, a thin line of gray rising from the chimney, curling into the autumn air with the calm certainty of something that had been doing this for a while. Warren stopped walking. He stood very still. Someone was in his house. He touched the sword at his hip. More habit than intent. The war had hammered the gesture into him until it happened without thought, the way breathing happened without thought. He wasn't going to draw it. Probably. But knowing it was there was the kind of comfort that didn't require justification. He came down the hill slowly, watching the house, watching the windows. His boots found the familiar path through the lower field without him having to think about it. His feet remembered even when the rest of him felt like a stranger. The door opened before he reached it. She was taller than he expected, though he wasn't sure what he'd expected. The armor she wore had survived a war. He could tell by the way damage accumulates differently from use than from neglect. These were real dents, real scratches, the kind that came from fighting rather than falling. She had green-gray skin and amber eyes, and she was holding a baby against her chest with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing it for months. A child of maybe 7 years old peered around her leg, holding a wooden sword carved with enough detail to suggest whoever made it had taken the work seriously. Warren's mind did something it had learned to do in combat. It went very quiet, very fast, and simply observed. The orc woman looked at him. She didn't move back. She didn't reach for the blade at her hip. She just looked at him with the steady attention of someone who had seen worse things than a tired soldier standing in a field. "You are Warren," she said. Not a question. Her accent was thick, the kind built from listening rather than studying, every word pronounced as if she was translating it in real time. Yes. His voice came out smaller than intended. 3 days of not talking to anyone had done something to it. He cleared his throat. "This is my house." "Yes," she said. "I am Volma. This is Grok. The baby. Behind me is Nara." The child with the sword, who was now studying Warren with the focused intensity of someone gathering data. "We have been living here for 4 months. 4 months. Warren did the arithmetic without meaning to. The war had ended 6 months ago. That means you moved in while it was still going. While my husband was dying, specifically. Her face didn't change. While he was bleeding on a battlefield 3 days' walk from here, I was in your house making soup from your stores. The honesty was somehow worse than any other response would have been. Warren looked at her for a moment, then past her, into his house. He could see his table, his father's table, the one built from the oak that had fallen the winter Warren was 4 years old, the table he'd grown up eating at. His chairs, his fireplace, where someone had hung clothing to dry. Orc clothing, leather and rough fabric mended so many times the repairs had been repaired. "I should call the guards," he said. "You could." Her voice was even. "They would come. They would remove us." Nara would cry. Grok would cry. I would not cry because orc widows do not cry where humans can see. A pause. "We would leave. We would find somewhere between here and nowhere. We would not survive the winter." She said it the way someone described weather. Factual, unconcerned, as if she'd already mapped every possible outcome and was simply waiting to see which one arrived. Warren looked at her for a long moment. "I need to think." "Then think inside." Volma stepped back from the doorway. "It is cold. Thinking works better when you are not freezing." He sat at his own table, in his own house, drinking tea that an orc had made from his tea stores, while an orc child stared at him with unblinking golden eyes, and an orc baby gummed contentedly on a piece of dried meat. The tea was good, better than he'd remembered his tea being. "You added something," he said. "Honey." Volma sat across from him, Grok on her lap. "And mint. Humans drink tea like punishment. It should taste like reward." He took another sip. She wasn't wrong. The domestic quality of the moment was doing something strange to him. He'd imagined coming home 1,000 times during the war, and in none of those imaginations had there been an orc at his table serving him improved tea. His mind kept trying to categorize the situation, threat, intrusion, problem to solve, and kept failing because none of those categories quite fit what was actually in front of him. 4 months, he said. "Why this house?" "Empty, far from the village, no close neighbors." Volma hesitated, just briefly. "And it had a garden, small, already growing. Potatoes, carrots, onions. Someone had planted them and left. I thought perhaps they would not return. Wars take more than they give back. My mother planted that garden," Warren said. "Before the conscription took every man between 16 and 40. She planted it so I'd have food when I came home." He looked at the table surface. The grain of the wood he traced with his finger 1,000 times as a child. She was dead before I made it past the third battle. Silence. Volma didn't offer condolences or fill the space with polite noise. She just sat there with her baby and her composed expression, and somehow the silence was the right thing. "The war is over," Warren said. "There are camps, resources, aid stations. For humans." Her voice didn't change. "Humans get camps and resources and aid. Orcs get stones thrown at them. Orcs get chased. Orcs get told that memory lasts longer than peace treaties." She looked at him steadily. "I do not ask for charity. I have been hunting. Small game, maintaining a house, fixing what I could fix. I was a smith before the war. I can work. I can earn my place." "With what?" Volma looked down at Grok in her arm. At Nara, who had settled onto the floor near the fireplace and was making her wooden sword fight invisible enemies. Then back at Warren, with eyes that held the particular exhaustion of a person who had been carrying weight that was never meant to be theirs alone. "With whatever you require," she said quietly. Warren felt something uncomfortable move through his chest. Not pity. Pity had a softness to it. This was harder than pity. It was the feeling of a problem that had no clean answer, only choices between different kinds of wrong. "I need to think," he said again. "Give me tonight." Volma nodded once. "Tonight is yours." He lay in his childhood room and rehearsed the words. Simple ones, direct ones. The kind that couldn't be misunderstood or argued with. "I'm sorry for your situation, but this is my house, and you need to find somewhere else. I'll give you provisions for the road, a week to prepare." That's fair. Nobody could call it cruel. The law was on his side. Common sense was on his side. He'd survived 3 years of war to come back to his own life, and that meant his own house, his own land, his own space to fall apart in private without an audience. He rehearsed the words until they felt solid, until he could say them in his head without flinching, until he believed he'd actually say them. Then he lay in the dark and listened to the house around him. It was a different house than the one he'd left. He could feel it, the way you feel when a room has been lived in, a quality of occupation that seeped into the walls and the air and the particular silence between sounds. Someone had fixed the loose board on the third stair. The window latch that had been broken for 2 years before he left was repaired. The smell of the place was different. Wood smoke and leather and something herbal he couldn't identify, layered over the familiar smell of old wood and cold stone. Through the floor, very faintly, he heard Grok fuss for a few minutes, then Volma's voice, low and even in Orcish, a sound that rose and fell like water over stone. The baby settled. Silence again. Warren stared at the ceiling and thought about a battlefield he'd crossed in the second year of the war. It had been a village once. He could tell by the foundations still visible under the scorched ground, the layout of what had been streets. Someone had planted those streets with a belief that they'd be walking them for the rest of their lives, had planted gardens in the same belief, had built houses in the same belief, the ordinary human assumption that tomorrow would exist because yesterday had. He got up before dawn. Volma was already awake. She was sitting at the fireplace, mending a piece of Nara's clothing with careful, precise stitches, the kind of work that needed good light and a patient hand. She didn't look up when he came down the stairs, but her posture shifted. Not much, just a slight settling that meant she knew he was there. Warren stood in the doorway between the stairs and the main room. Grok was asleep in a basket near the fire, mouth open, making small sounds. Nara's wooden sword was propped against the wall next to a pair of small boots that had been resoled twice. The iron hooks beside the fireplace, the ones his mother had hung herb bundles from every autumn, had been cleaned. They'd been black with old grease for years. Someone had worked at them with something abrasive until the iron showed through again. He stood there for a long time. Vulma kept stitching. He sat down at the table. She glanced at him once, then reached for the kettle without being asked. He didn't say the rehearsed words. He wasn't sure if he decided something or simply failed to decide. Some choices, he would come to understand, looked identical from the outside. The first week was uncomfortable in the particular way that everything new and wrong is uncomfortable. Like wearing someone else's boots. Technically functional. Strange at every step. Warren took the small room upstairs, the one he'd had as a child. Vulma and the children took the main bedroom on the ground floor. They navigated the small space of the farmhouse by unspoken agreement. She rose earlier, he stayed up later, and in the middle hours they moved around each other in a careful silence that was mostly working. Vulma didn't make conversation. Neither did he. There was, between them, the particular wariness of two people who understood each other's capability for damage and had decided, provisionally, to keep their hands at their sides. Nara had no such agreement with anyone. On the first morning, she appeared at Warren's elbow while he was sharpening a fence tool and had informed him that he was holding it wrong. He was not, in fact, holding it wrong, but he'd learned within 12 hours that arguing with Nara was a project requiring more energy than he typically had before his second cup of tea. "You have sad eyes," she told him on the second day. It was not an insult. It was an observation, delivered with the same flat accuracy she applied to everything. Like the dogs that come to the village edge after battles. They look for their people, but the people are not there. Warren thought about this for a moment. That's a sad thing to say to someone. True things are sometimes sad. She tilted her head. Your eyes will be less sad when you have been home longer. That is what Mama says. She says sadness that comes from war is different from sadness that comes from a heart. War sadness lives in the body. It leaves when the body believes it is safe. She looked at him critically. Your body does not believe it yet. No, he agreed. Not yet. She nodded, accepting this, and went back to whatever she'd been doing, which was apparently cataloging everything in his house that she found interesting. He would find her later studying the tools in the barn with the concentration of an apprentice. On the third morning, she asked about his snoring. Like wind through a cave, she described it. Whoosh, whoosh. That's called snoring. Adults do it. Mama doesn't. Grok doesn't. Only you. She considered. Maybe you have a curse. Father Oswin says humans get cursed when they anger the gods. I'm not cursed. Maybe the gods are just disappointed. She ducked away before he could respond, and he heard the grin in her footsteps. On the fifth day, he found her in his mother's garden with a small leather pouch. What are you doing? Planting. As if obvious. The pouch held apple seeds, the small cloth bag he'd carried through 3 years of war, the last remnants of his mother's trees from the family farm that had been burned in the first year of the conflict, seeds he had found pressed into a coat pocket when he'd been going through her things in a dead village. Seeds he'd carried because they were small, and because stopping carrying them felt like abandoning the last living piece of her. Where did you get that? Found it. Under your bed. Nara looked up at him with complete, unashamed honesty. Mama says things that hide want to be found. You went through my room. I was looking for interesting objects. You have very boring things, but seeds are not boring. Seeds are future trees. Warren crouched down. "Those seeds are mine. They're dead if not planted," Nara said. "Seeds are not pets. Cannot keep them in a bag forever. Must put in the ground or they forget how to grow." The logic was childish and simple and completely correct. He'd known it was correct for 3 years. He'd been too afraid to act on it, because planting meant accepting that he was going to be here, that here was real, that the past was past and the present was what he had now. "Do you know how to plant apple seeds?" he asked. Her face lit up. "No. But you can teach. Teaching is sharing knowledge. Sharing knowledge makes tribes stronger. We're not a tribe. We're housemates. Housemates is a small tribe. Still counts." She held out the pouch. "Show me how to make trees." They spent an hour in the garden. Warren showed her depth and spacing and how to mark the spots, how to water without drowning. Nara asked questions with the relentless efficiency of a child who believed that every adult was a resource to be extracted of useful information. When he finally looked up, Vulma was standing in the doorway of the house. She'd been watching for a while, he guessed. When their eyes met, she gave a single small nod. Brief, precise, nothing more. He turned back to the garden. 3 days later, he heard the hammer. He'd been repairing a section of fence on the western edge of the property when the sound started, regular, purposeful, coming from the barn. He walked back and pushed the barn door open. Vulma had cleared a section of the barn floor and set up a makeshift smithing station. She had found, or built, he wasn't sure, a small portable forge, and she was working a piece of metal he recognized as part of the broken gate latch that had been sitting useless in a corner since before the war. Her movements were economical and precise. She wasn't performing the work. She was doing it with the focused attention of someone for whom craft was a language more reliable than words. She glanced at him over her shoulder. "That latch has been broken for years," Warren said. "I know." She turned the metal. "I will also fix the hinge on the barn door, the cracked beam on the east wall of the house, and the well mechanism, which is wearing incorrectly and will fail completely before spring." She paused. "If you want me to stop, I will stop. But things that can be fixed are better fixed." He watched her work for a while. There was a quality to it, the same quality he'd noticed in the mended clothes, in the cleaned iron hooks, in the repaired stairboard. An investment of care that went beyond what was strictly required. "The latch," he said finally. "My father made it, when I was a boy." Vulma was quiet for a moment. Her hammer strokes didn't change rhythm, but her attention shifted. "I can see his work in it. Solid construction. Wrong metal for a latch. Too soft, but the joinery is excellent." She glanced at him. "He built well." "Yes," Warren said. "He did." She turned back to the forge. He stood in the barn doorway for another minute, then went back to the fence. In the second week, the village found out. Ida arrived carrying bread and 20 years of knowing Warren, and she embraced him with the force of someone who genuinely feared he was dead. She smelled like her kitchen, and she talked with the practiced speed of a person who had stored up 2 years of news and needed to release it all at once. And for a few minutes, it was almost like before. Before the war. Before everything. Then Nara appeared in the doorway. Ida's face did several things in quick succession. "That's an orc. Her name is Nara. There's an orc child in your house, Warren." "Yes." Ida took a step back, then another, as if distance might rearrange what she was seeing into something that made more sense. "What have you done?" "Made an arrangement. With orcs." She dropped her voice. as if a quieter volume might make it less real. "Warren, they killed people. They killed our people. Your own mother died because of what they did to the supply lines. And having them here is my choice," Warren said. "My house, my land." Ida thrust the basket at him, hard enough to communicate exactly how she felt about that. "Then you're a fool." She turned and walked away with quick, angry steps, and the bread she'd brought was still warm when he set it on his table. Nara had watched the entire exchange from the doorway without moving. "She has big fear," the child said. "Yes." "Did my people kill her family?" Warren looked at her for a moment, at her serious golden eyes, at the wooden sword on her back, at the missing baby tusk that made her look both fierce and young at the same time. "Probably," he said honestly. "Just like my people probably killed hers." "That is a sad circle," Nara said. "Everyone killing everyone. Nobody winning. Then when it stops, everyone just finds new reasons." She looked in the direction Ida had gone. "War is stupid." "You're absolutely right." "I know." She went back inside. That evening, Father Oswin arrived. He was thin and kind-eyed, and a little bit distracted in the way of a man who had too many problems in his parish and not enough answers for any of them. He stood on the porch and held his prayer book and looked past Warren to where Volma was visible through the window. "I've heard concerning reports," he said. "I'm sure you have. The village is unsettled. People are afraid. They're saying you've betrayed the memory of everyone who died." "And what do you think?" Warren asked. The priest was quiet for a long moment. "I think mercy is supposed to be hard. That forgiveness is supposed to cost something." He finally met Warren's eyes. "I also think you're either the bravest man I know or the most foolish. Which should I be?" "Whichever one helps you sleep at night." He paused. "The village will petition the Lord for their removal. I can't stop that, but I wanted you to know that I'll be praying for all of you." He left. Warren stood in the doorway and watched the dark settle over the fields and thought about the difference between prayers and actions and how the distance between them was where most of the world's damage happened. That night, Nara couldn't sleep. She appeared on the stairs in a nightshirt that had been made for a human child and was approximately twice as long as she needed. She climbed onto the chair across from him with the solemn purposefulness of a child who decided that a conversation was going to happen and was prepared to see it through. "If humans make us leave," she said quietly, "where do we go?" Warren didn't have an answer that wasn't a lie. "Your mama is strong," he said. "She'll figure something out." Mama is strong, but also tired. Her feet swung back and forth, not reaching the floor. She does not sleep sometimes, just sits and stares at nothing. When Papa died, part of Mama died too. The part that makes choices easy. Now every choice is heavy. "I'm sorry about your father," Warren said. "Are you sorry or polite sorry?" "What's the difference?" Sorry is when the heart hurts for someone. Polite sorry is when the mouth makes sounds because sounds are expected. She looked at him steadily, waiting. Sorry, Warren said. She nodded, accepting this. "I do not remember much of Papa. Mostly his voice, deep like thunder but friendlier. He would tell stories about ancestors, orcs who chose honor over victory, about how strength means protecting, not destroying." She looked at her hands. "He said the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose not to fight." "He sounds like a good father." "Yes, but good fathers still die in wars. Being good does not make you arrow-proof." Her voice was matter-of-fact in the particular way of children who have processed grief into the structure of their understanding of the world. "War is stupid. Everyone dies. Nobody wins. And when it stops, people find new reasons to hate each other. You're absolutely right, Warren said. I know. She hopped down from the chair. The question is whether you are smart enough to choose different. Different from what? Different from all the stupid that makes wars happen in the first place. She paused at the foot of the stairs. Good night, Warren. I hope your body believes it is safe soon. Then you can sleep properly. She padded back upstairs, and Warren sat alone in his house and thought about a 7-year-old who had already worked out the essential question and wondered if the adults of the world would ever get around to answering it. The cold treatment from the village came first. Then the broken fence. 3 posts on the north side. Clean breaks that hadn't come from weather or age. Someone had walked out here at night and done it deliberately. Warren found it at dawn. He stood looking at it for a moment, then picked up the tools and started on repairs. Volma appeared 20 minutes later. She looked at the fence, at Warren's face, and picked up the other set of tools without a word. They worked in silence until it was fixed. Will they come back? He asked. She drove a post into the ground with a single practiced stroke. People who want you to leave do not stop at fences. She was right, as she was usually right about things she'd had more experience with than he had. He met Mukhar in the market square the following week. The old orc looked like the aftermath of a war, which he was. Missing his left arm, face crossed with scars, walking with a limp that suggested the disagreement between his leg and hip was ongoing and unresolved. He watched Warren navigate the shuttered expressions of 3 separate merchants before stepping forward. Mukhar hears things, he said. He always spoke in third person. Warren would learn. It wasn't affectation. It was the remnant of an orc honorific tradition that had survived the war, even when most other things hadn't. Mukhar hears Warren houses Orc Widow and her cubs. News travels fast. Small villages have nothing else to trade. The old orc's one working eye was sharp. Mukhar knew her husband, fought beside him in 3 battles, good orc, died protecting others when he had every reason to run. He paused. Volma says he died quickly. Volma lies to make the child's grief smaller. He did not die quickly. Took 6 hours. Screamed much of it, but spent his last breath on a message for his wife. Warren said nothing. Message was, survive. Choose life over honor. The cubs need you more than the ancestors need your blade. Mukhar's expression was unreadable. Orc widows are supposed to take the warrior's sword and join him in death. Choose honor. Volma chose survival. Her village cast her out for it. Called her coward. Called the children the same. So she has nowhere, Warren said slowly. Not among orcs, not among humans. She belongs to nothing. She's keeping 2 children alive through stubbornness alone. The old orc fixed his eye on Warren. Mukhar also brings warning. Village fools are planning something. More than fences. Angry men with too much ale and not enough to lose. Dangerous combination. He turned to limp away, then stopped. Mukhar does what he can. But Mukhar is old, crippled, and has no authority here. What Mukhar can do is warn. Warren must do the rest. He walked away without waiting for a response. Warren ran. He came through the gate at speed and found Volma in the yard, splitting wood with the calm efficiency she brought to everything physical. She read his face before he'd said a word, and set the axe down. He told her everything. She was quiet when he finished. She looked at the house, at the garden, where small shoots marked where they'd planted the apple seeds, at the barn, where the repaired latch gleamed on the gate, "We should leave," she said. "Tonight. Take what we could carry." "No." The word came out with more certainty than he'd felt about anything in months. He felt something settle in his chest, the particular solidness of a decision that had been made before the mind caught up to it. "You're not leaving. This is your home. We are temporary." "I'm saying you're not." He met her eyes. "Because you fixed this house when it was rotting. Because Nara planted my mother's seeds when I was too afraid to. Because I watched you work in that barn and I know what it looks like when a person puts their whole self into something, and you've been putting your whole self into this place for 4 months. He paused. "This is your home. I'm choosing it. Right now." Volma stared at him with the expression of someone recalculating something fundamental. "You owe us nothing," she said quietly. "I owe you a home," Warren said. "I have one." "Sir," Nara appeared in the doorway. She had been listening, of course. She always was. "Home is where people choose to stay, even when leaving is easier," she announced. "That is what it is." "Yes," Warren agreed. "Exactly that." They came that night. 8 men. 9 counting the one at the back who kept almost leaving, held in place by whatever combination of loyalty and doubt and ale had brought him here in the first place. Warren heard them from inside. Boots on gravel, the particular careless noise of people who believe they're being stealthy but have had enough to drink that the body is operating on a slight delay. He came downstairs to find Volma already standing at the door. Grok settled with Nara, blade strapped on, absolutely still. "You don't have to come out," he said. "If they come for my family, I stand with my family." She said it the way she said most things, simply without drama, as though it were the only possible interpretation of the situation. That is what warriors do. They went out together. The lead man was Marcus, the blacksmith's son, built like his father but without the patience that came from years of careful craft. Stefan the farmer stood beside him, smelling of ale and righteous certainty, and behind them were 6 other men Warren recognized from years ago, before the war had taken everyone away, and then sent them back changed. "Warren." Marcus tried for authoritative, and landed somewhere between it and nervous. "We need to talk. Then talk. About them. About the message it sends, having them here. Like we're weak. Like orcs can just—" "They didn't just," Warren said. "I made a choice. My house, my property, my choice." "Your choice affects the whole village," Stefan said. "Harboring orc scum." "Don't." Warren stepped forward. His voice stayed even. The war had taught him that the voice was a tool like anything else, the right tool for the moment. "Think carefully about the next thing you say." "What's he going to do? There's one of him," someone muttered from the back. "I killed 23 orcs that I counted." Warren said it without inflection, without pride or shame, just the flat weight of fact. On battlefields, following orders I didn't question because questioning wasn't allowed. I killed boys who cried for their mothers in a language I didn't understand. I killed farmers who'd been conscripted. I did all of it because someone told me it was necessary. He looked at each face in turn. Then I came home, and I found a mother trying to keep her children alive. A child who plants seeds because she believes in futures. A baby who laughs at my face with complete indifference to what kind of face it is. His voice dropped. War took something from me. A piece at a time. They gave it back. I'm not going to stand here and apologize for that. Silence. Volma stepped forward. Her voice was quieter than Warren's had been, but it carried. "You want to remove us? I understand this. I do not pretend you have no reasons." She looked at each man in the group. steady, unhurried. But answer me a question first. Will removing us bring back your dead? Will it make the war unhappen? Will it heal the wounds that will show in your faces for the rest of your lives?" She paused. "Or will it simply add more grief to a world that already has too much of it?" The group shifted. The man at the back had stopped looking like he wanted to leave and started looking like he wished he'd never come. Then Peter spoke. He was the baker's apprentice, young, with the look of someone who had been carrying something heavy for a while and had been waiting for the right moment to put it down. "My best friend was an orc," he said. His voice was unsteady. "We fought together for 2 years. He saved my life 4 times. We had plans. After the war, we were going to open a bakery, combine what we each knew." He stopped. When he continued, the words came out rough at the edges. "He died taking an arrow that was meant for me. He had enough time to say one thing. He said, 'Make the bread anyway. Prove that something good can come from all of it.'" He looked at Marcus. "I'm not doing this. I don't know what I thought I was doing here, but I'm not doing it." He turned and walked away. One by one, the others followed, not quite meeting anyone's eyes, moving with the slightly deflated posture of men who had talked themselves into something and been talked out of it and were now trying to figure out what to do with themselves. Marcus was last. He stood for a long moment looking at Warren with an expression that had started as anger and traveled somewhere more complicated. Then he left without speaking. Vulma let out a slow breath. "Very brave," she said. "Or very stupid." People keep saying that. Because it keeps being both. She looked at him with something in her expression that he would spend a while afterward trying to name. Not gratitude exactly. Something closer to recognition. The expression of a person who has been waiting to see evidence of something, and finally has it. "You did not have to stand there." "Yes," Warren said simply. "I did." The weeks that followed were quieter than the weeks before, which was its own kind of adjustment. The village didn't embrace what Warren had built. They didn't send delegations of goodwill or offers of friendship. What they did was gradually, grudgingly, stop fighting it. The cold middle ground of people who have decided that the energy of opposition costs more than the discomfort of tolerance. It wasn't acceptance. But it was a kind of ceasefire, and Warren had learned to recognize the value of ceasefires. Father Oswin started coming by on Thursdays, ostensibly to pray. Actually, Warren realized by the 3rd visit to teach Nara to read, which had apparently been suggested by Nara herself in the way she suggested most things, directly, with the unstated assumption that her idea was excellent, and the only remaining question was when they'd start. Nara took to reading with the intensity she brought to everything. Within a month, she was through the priest's primer and asking for something harder. Within 2 months, she was reading to Grok from books that Grok definitely couldn't understand yet, but which Grok seemed to find soothing anyway. The sound of his sister's voice was apparently sufficient content. Ida's bread reappeared on the doorstep one morning without explanation. It kept appearing after that, always gone by the time Warren looked. He didn't force the issue. Some things healed in their own time, around the edges, in the parts people didn't have to acknowledge out loud. Mukar came by on irregular days, leaning on his walking stick with the ease of a man who had made peace with his limitations without making peace with anything else. He taught Warren Orc drinking songs that were entirely inappropriate for polite company. He told Nara stories about her father, real stories with detail and weight in the particular dignity of memories given to someone who deserved them. Nara would sit completely still for these, which was the only time in Warren's experience that she was completely still and cry and laugh in the same breath and ask for more. He taught Volma where to find good leather and who in the nearest town would pay fairly for skilled smithing work. He did not explain why he kept coming. He didn't seem to think he owed an explanation. He had decided to be useful, and he was being useful, and that was sufficient. The apple shoots survived the first frost. Warren found himself checking on them every morning, measuring their growth, worrying about cold nights, feeling something embarrassingly close to pride about each new leaf. He'd carried those seeds through 3 years of blood and fire, and had been too frightened to put them in the ground. Now they were in the ground, and they were growing, and some mornings that felt like the most significant fact in the world. "They're going to make it," Nara announced one morning, crouching beside him in the garden with her hands on her knees, examining a shoot with the authority of someone who had no horticultural training, but had strong opinions regardless. Seeds from warrior farmers always survive. Is in their nature. I'm not a warrior. You fought in a war. You defended your family. You choose the hard path over the easy one every time there's a choice. She looked up at him. The sword is just decoration. Warren laughed. Actually laughed. The kind from the belly, not the polite kind he'd been producing for years as a social transaction. Nara looked pleased with herself in the way she always did when she'd caused a reaction she'd been aiming for. "When did you get so wise?" he asked. "Was always wise. You were just too busy being sad to notice." She stood, brushed dirt from her knees. Sad takes time to leave. Like winter. Eventually spring comes. You just have to survive until then. She went inside, leaving him crouching in the garden with mud on his hands and something lighter in his chest than had been there a few months ago. It was a Tuesday when Volma laughed for the first time. It happened because of Grok, who had recently discovered that he could pull himself upright by holding on to furniture, and who had been spending several days falling dramatically from various surfaces, and treating each fall as a fascinating new data point rather than a setback. On this particular Tuesday, he had pulled himself up using Warren's boot, and when Warren moved his foot to avoid stepping on small orc fingers, Grok sat down with an expression of such profound personal offense that Nara started laughing, which set Warren off, and Volma, who'd been mending something at the table with her usual focused composure, made a sound. It was brief. It was quiet. It was gone almost immediately, replaced by the composed expression she usually wore. But for a moment, her whole face had changed. Something had come through from underneath, something younger than the person who'd been walking around in that armor. Warren caught it and didn't say anything. Some things you didn't comment on. But that evening he noticed that when she sat at the table, she sat slightly differently, less as if she were waiting for something to require her response, more as if she were simply sitting. He came downstairs that night and found her at the table with a lamp burning low, and sat across from her without asking permission or offering explanation. They shared the silence for a while, the comfortable kind that had developed between them without either of them deciding to develop it. "I need to ask you something," he said eventually. "Orcs do not know how to answer any other way than honestly. Do you think we can make this work? Not just survive, actually build something that lasts?" Volma was quiet for a long time, long enough that Grok, in the other room, made a small sound and was still again. "I think what we're building has no map," she said finally. "No previous example, no guarantee. We are writing a story the world does not have language for yet." She looked at him steadily. Old stories end in war, end in blood, end in the same mistakes carried by different hands. But maybe a new story ends differently. Her voice was even, but something moved underneath it. Maybe is not a promise, but maybe is better than never. Warren reached across the table. She looked at his hand for a moment, then took it, not tentatively. The way Volmer did everything, with full presence, once the decision was made. Then let's be maybe, he said. Together. Together, she said. And that was enough. Spring came the way good things usually did, gradually, and then all at once. The apple shoots survived the winter. The village began its slow rearrangement towards something that wasn't quite acceptance, but wasn't opposition either. The cold shoulder merchant started selling to Warren again, first with minimal conversation, then with more. Ida started knocking on the door instead of leaving bread silently, and one afternoon she was standing at the table drinking Volmer's honey mint tea with the expression of someone doing something slightly against their better judgment and deciding it was worth it anyway. She never said anything direct about having been wrong, but she started coming on Tuesdays. Grok learned to walk with the enthusiastic clumsiness of a creature discovering mobility for the first time. He fell constantly, got up instantly, and treated every fall as simply part of the general project of being upright. He called Warren Wawa, which Nara explained meant honorary papa, who is not the real papa, but is important anyway in a different but still real way, a formulation she clearly felt was precise and complete. Warren stopped correcting it after the third week. Volmer's armor came off piece by piece, not dramatically, not in a moment, just gradually. First the pauldrons, then the braces. Then one morning she came down in the plain leather and cloth work clothes she'd been wearing under it, and that was that. When he mentioned it, she said, "Armor is for warriors preparing for battle. I'm not a warrior anymore. I'm a mother raising children in peace." A pause. Boring is a luxury. Boring means no one is trying to kill you. I'll drink to boring, Warren said. They clinked cups. Water for her, tea for him. The most undramatic toast in the history of toasts. That summer, the apple trees flowered for the first time. Small white blossoms that lasted only a week before the petals scattered in the wind and the first tiny green fruits began to appear, barely visible. Nothing impressive, but there. Nara found them first. She came running in with the full-body enthusiasm of a child who's been waiting for something and seen it arrive, and Grok started laughing simply because his sister was laughing, and they all went outside together and stood in the garden and looked. Still years before apples worth eating, Volmer observed. Apple trees are patient, Warren said, and we have time. Nara looked up at him. She was 9 now. Taller, with a new permanent tusk growing in where the baby one had been, and an air of deliberate wisdom she deployed like a tool. We have more than time, she said. We have family. Family is a tree that keeps growing even after the person who planted it is gone. That's very profound, Nara. I know, she considered. I am profound sometimes. Other times I am just loud. Depends on the day. Father Oswin found Warren at the property line one evening in late summer, watching the last light leave the sky. He came quietly, the way priests learn to move around people in the middle of something interior, and stood beside him without speaking for a while. 2 more orc families have petitioned to settle near the village, he said finally. Widows, mostly. Refugees. They heard about this place. He gestured toward the farm without looking at it. About what happened here. About what you built. Warren felt something move through his chest. Not quite pride. The feeling of a bet paying off. What did the village say? They're considering it. The priest smiled slightly. 6 months ago, the answer would have been no before the question was finished. Now there's a discussion. He looked at the farm, at the warm light in the windows, at the garden and the repaired fence and the barn that had been falling apart when Warren arrived. You planted something here, Warren, and I don't just mean the apple trees. After the priest left, Warren went inside. Volma was reading to the children by the fire, an old orc legend she'd told him once, about the first among her people to choose peace over war, cast out by his tribe, who walked alone until he found a valley where he could build, and slowly others came, and the valley became the strongest place in the mountains, not through force but through survival and stubbornness, and the refusal to stop trying. Grok was asleep in her lap. Nara was fighting her eyelids and losing. Happy ending? Warren asked quietly. True ending, Volma said. Better than happy. Happy is fantasy. True is real. She closed the book. The valley is a real place. North of here. Orc Peace Valley. You can see it on old maps. Maybe we should visit someday. Maybe. She looked at him across the sleeping weight of Grok. Or maybe we build our own valley. Start small, just us. Small beginnings lead to large futures. Warren carried Nara upstairs. She woke just enough to say, "Good night, Warren," with the tone of someone who has fully expected you to be there and finds this satisfactory. And he went back downstairs with something in his chest that had no name he'd been given but felt like everything the name should mean. He stood at the mantel and looked at the small carving he had made as a child. 2 hands holding each other, one large, one small. He'd made it the winter his father died because he'd needed something to hold. He'd left it here when the war took him, and Volma had kept it on the mantel without knowing what it was. He left it where it was. In the morning, Nara found it. "What is this?" "It's us," Warren said. "All of us. Together." She studied it for a long moment with the gravity of a person receiving something important. "Can I make one? With 4 hands. For 4 people." "I think that would be exactly right." She spent the entire day carving. The proportions were wrong. One hand ended up larger than the others, in a way that couldn't be explained by any realistic anatomy. The wood was not entirely smooth, but she placed it on the mantel beside Warren's with the expression of someone who has completed something significant, and it was. "Now it is complete," she said. Volma came to look. She studied both carvings, reached up and adjusted them so they sat side by side, each supporting the other, neither quite complete without the other next to it. "In orc tradition," she said quietly, "family carvings are sacred. Passed down. A promise that connection continues beyond death. Then these will be passed to your children," Warren said. "And theirs." "Our children," Volma corrected. Gently but completely. "Not mine. Ours. Family is not a possession. It is a shared responsibility." Warren stood beside her. Outside, the apple trees moved in the evening wind. The valley below the hill was going golden in the last light. Somewhere down the road, 2 orc families were waiting to hear whether they could build something here. Small beginnings, he thought, patient as trees. Tending to them was the work. 2 years later, 17 families lived in the valley, mixed human and orc, imperfect in the ways that all real things are imperfect, working on it. The apple trees were taller, still years from their full harvest, but growing. Patient as they had always been. Nara was 9 going on 45 and had appointed herself the valley's unofficial teacher of reading for anyone under 12. Species irrelevant. She had opinions about this. She shared them. Grok was 3, talked constantly, climbed everything, and called Warren Papa without any qualifications whatsoever. Warren had stopped finding corrections necessary. Volma and Warren sat on the porch one evening in late summer, watching the valley below. The small market where orcs and humans traded goods and recipes and complaints about weather. The children playing in the space between the houses. The smoke from 17 chimneys rising into the same sky. "Do you ever regret it?" Warren asked. "Staying, choosing this?" Volma considered the question with her usual seriousness, giving it the weight it deserved. "I regret many things," she said. "I regret that my children grew up without their father. I regret the war. I regret that the world is still not fully ready for what we are building here." She looked at him. "But I do not regret staying. I do not regret choosing life over tradition. I do not regret believing that maybe could become yes." "And has it?" Volma looked at the valley, at the houses, the market, the children, the smoke from 17 chimneys reaching toward the same sky. "What do you think?" Warren looked, really looked, at everything that hadn't existed 2 years ago, at everything that shouldn't exist by any calculation that only accounted for what people were afraid of. "I think we planted seeds," he said. "Some in the garden, some in hearts, and both kinds grew into something worth keeping." "Very human," Volma said. "Orc saying is simpler, together is stronger than alone. Always." Inside the house, Nara was teaching Grok a song. Something about warriors and peace and families that chose each other instead of being chosen by blood. The words came through the window, rough and slightly off-key and absolutely certain. Warren had gone to war, a young man who thought he understood how the world worked. He'd come home broken. The kind of broken that doesn't announce itself, that just lives in the way you sleep and the way you flinch and the way nothing quite feels like home anymore. He'd found his house occupied by the enemy. He'd found instead family. The work hadn't been finished in 2 years. It wouldn't be finished in 20. There would always be resistance, always be people who saw difference as threat instead of opportunity. But that was tomorrow's problem, and tomorrow's problem could be faced tomorrow. Tonight, Warren had a family, had a home, had small apple trees growing in a garden planted by hands that should have been enemies and chose to be something else instead. The moon came up over the valley, silver light on mixed rooftops, on gardens growing food for multiple families, on children sleeping in houses provided by people who looked nothing alike and loved just the same. Some victories aren't won on battlefields. They're won in the quiet moments when people choose to see persons instead of labels, when they choose hope over fear, when they open their door to someone the world says they should be afraid of, and find out that the world was wrong about that particular thing. Warren had been broken when he came home. He was still, in some ways, being repaired. But the tools were good, and the people helping were patient, and the trees were growing. That, he had learned, was enough.